This is the fifth and final video about the class competition task that we are working on. And just a quick review, in the first video we learned how to navigate our data set using the command key or the control key, depending on your operating system, command and shift to move around the data set and to highlight the data set, which is useful keystrokes to know. We then moved on to entering formulas to have the spreadsheet do calculations for us. We had the spreadsheet calculate the mean and the median and the mode, which are all three different measures of central tendency. And then we also had the spreadsheet calculate the minimum, maximum range, and the quartiles and the interquartile range in order to calculate or represent the spread of the data, how spread out the data is. And then finally, in the last video, we used the power of spreadsheets to produce this histogram representing all of the quiz scores. And so it's nice to have a graphical representation of the data, and then we can compare the numbers that we calculated with the graphical representation. And because we set up our bucket sizes and our limits on our horizontal axis, our minimum and maximum, we can set the histograms for the Algebra 2 and the AP Statistics class, we can set them up in the same way so that it's very easy to compare them. And in this final video, I just want to introduce some formatting things that you can do with spreadsheets. If I try to print this, it comes out, it looks kind of rough. And I'd like to maybe have it be a little more presentable. So instead of just printing something out like this, I'm going to do a few things here in order to improve the look of and maybe the legibility of all of this stuff. So first thing, I'm going to click on the number 1 over here, and notice that highlights the whole row. And if I do a 2-finger click or to get the context menu, or a right click depending on your system, but you bring up the context menu, and I'm going to insert 1 above. I'm going to just put a row up here. And I know that this is the geometry data because that's what it says right here on this tab. But I want to title my data set. And so I'll call this Geometry Quiz Scores. And notice when I enter that text, that the text goes off, it goes beyond the boundary of that first box and into this second box. And so I can drag this and make it wider, but then my whole data column is wider and it makes my whole spreadsheet wider. That's not a great solution in this case. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these 4 boxes, and I'm going to merge them into one. And so now you can see that the lines dividing each of these cells is gone, and this is like one big cell now. And that's just something that we can do in order if we want to include a bunch of text or something in our spreadsheet. I'm also going to make this bold and give it a bigger font, maybe even bigger than that, just to make it stand out a little bit. And so that's a title that's going to appear on my more presentable sheet. These data calculations, I want to slide them down 1 row to give myself another row up there. So notice if I go to the edge, and when you get the hand, you can grab the data set and you can slide it around and move it wherever you want. And I just want to move it down 1 box, because up here I'm gonna merge these 2 boxes, and I'm just gonna call this statistical measures. Or let me do this instead. I'll do central tendency. I'll make that bold. I'll give it another background color, a different background color. I like a nice soft green. And then I'm going to highlight my measures of central tendency here. And I'm going to use this little border button to create borders. So now I have a nice little table that summarizes my measures of central tendency. And I'm going to highlight these measures of spread and drag them down a couple of boxes so that I can really do the same thing. I want to title these columns. So let me merge those together. I'll call this spread. And again, make it bold, Control B, change the background color, and highlight the little table here and add my borders. So that's a nice, tight representation of all of my central tendency and spread. And it's very presentable. And just a few little tricks to make our spreadsheet look better. Now, the other thing that I want to do is complete this task. Like maybe after I go and do all of these things for each of these classes, and I'm ready to decide, all right, who's coming in first, who's coming in second, and who's coming in third for these 3 classes that are in this competition. And your task is to explain, you know, the ranking of the classes and justify it in some way. So I'm going to highlight a collection of boxes here, and I'm going to merge them all together. And so now I have one big box, and inside I'm going to say, I think the geometry class wins first place because my best friend is in the geometry class, and I want his class to win, period. Obviously, this is not a very good justification for the geometry class coming in first, but it's just meant to serve as an example. Now, when I enter that text, notice that it's all cut off. I can't read this. You can see up here all the text that's actually in that box. But what I'd like to do again is to just do a little bit of formatting. First of all, and then I'm going to use these buttons up here to do it. So I do want my left justification, so that's fine. The vertical alignment, I'm going to start at the top and go to the bottom. So I changed my vertical alignment so that it goes from top to bottom. And then this next one is about text wrapping. And I'd like for the text, instead of just extending way out here and into space and behind my graph, I want to wrap the text. And then it wraps and it all displays inside of this cell. And so this is a really nice sort of polished version of the geometry, the analysis of the geometry quiz scores. So now you have the task of doing similar things to your Algebra 2 and AP Statistics class so that you can actually make a meaningful ranking. Who came in first, second, and third? Make sure that you describe what those are in this spreadsheet task.